14's toughest dungeons are here to stay, if players want them. We will continue deliberating on the idea to satisfy as many players as possible. With the release of patch 6.25, 14 introduced a wildly popular new feature, Variant and Criterion Dungeons. What? Oh, wildly popular? What? Variant dungeons are designed around choice and replayability. Okay, just real quick, in the chat, how many people have never done the Criterion dungeon? How many people did it and regretted doing it and realized, you know what, I never have to do this? Started it, got bored. Okay, yeah, no reason to do it. Exactly. Now, for me personally, if the Savage version was actually different, then I would be more interested in the Savage version. But doing the normal version all over again, I'm not interested in that, man. I'm not gonna waste my time with that shit, man. That's trash. It's just 20 minutes of just not dying on like mid to hard mechanics. That's it. And the mechanics aren't even different. They're the same as normal mode. There's nothing new in it. What if it gave you more BIS gear in the Savage dungeons? Would you do it then? I mean, yeah, but they can't do that though. But that's not even an option. And you know what? Honestly, I might not even, because what's the point? Because it's just going to be outclassed by crafted anyway, unless it wasn't outclassed by crafted, and then it would completely change. That question is a good question, but it's an impossibility. It would literally never happen. They don't even give rewards now. So you're suggesting they give rewards better than the raid tier? Baby steps, guys. Okay, baby steps. Maybe one day we'll get more than materia out of the Savage Criterion, okay? You got to go with baby steps first. Let's get raid equivalent gear first. Okay, before any crazy talk. Variant dungeons are designed around choice and replayability, focusing on puzzles and branching paths in addition to battle content. Criterion dungeons are visually similar but incredibly difficult, on par with Extreme Trials or Savage Raids. With 2 Variant and Criterion dungeons now available in 14, the feature seems to be a hit with the player base. No. Let me tell you guys why we're getting 3 of these. You know why we're getting 3 of these? Because they were slated for 3. That's why. Because they have already committed to this since last expansion. They've already decided that we're not going to get a Boja. We're not going to get a Eureka. This is what we're getting. They're going to do this regardless of how many people actually enjoy it or not for at least this expansion, okay? I was honestly surprised to see that we were getting it next expansion. But do not be confused. These are not popular. This is not a hit with the player base. Most people have never even done this. I know a vast majority of people have never even done the Savage versions of this because there's no reason to. There's like, okay. This is how you know it's bad. I log in at server up with a group. We run hardcore. You know, I love the ultimates. I love clearing as fast as possible. I love all that shit. Hardcore prog, world prog, whatever it is, you know? I love that shit. Now, it's telling when I am telling you that Savage is a fucking waste of your time. You are only going to do it if you are fucking bored out of your fucking mind and this is the only game you play. That's it. Other than that, there's no reason to do it, besides maybe completion's sake. But the thing is I don't need to complete this to feel validated or anything like that. The older I get, the more I realize what is a good use of time. Savage Criterion is fucking trash. It is awful. It is some of the worst content they've ever put in the game, man. Now, the normal Criterion, I actually like it a lot. I think it's awesome. I think it's really interesting. I think the fights are really awesome. I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed the last one. But the Savage version, I'm not doing it again until it's worth my time. I'm not going to do it until the rewards are good or they actually make it different from the normal mode. Following the release of patch 6.45 FanFest in July, Inverse spoke to Ishikawa and 14's assistant director, Tsuyoshi Yokoza. Yo, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry I'm butchering these names. About the design and philosophy behind the Variant and Criterion Dungeons. They also offered some intriguing hints about how these challenges might evolve in the future. Okay, that's interesting. What has the player reception been like to Variant and Criterion Dungeons? How has that reception shaped your future plans? Moving forward, I'd like to keep what was well received while improving upon aspects that were inconvenient. Okay. Beginning in patch 6.4, the party list shows which variant actions your party members have equipped. I'm pretty sure, yeah, so he's talking about variant, I feel here. Like, all memes aside, there were quite a few people that enjoyed variant. I mean, I didn't do variant because I didn't give a shit about the lore or anything like that. I thought it was cool the different paths you could go. I thought it was cool that you saw different bosses. So there was some replayability there. It wasn't the best replayability, but there was some replayability there. And yeah, it was easy, but it wasn't supposed to be hard. So the fact that they put something like that in the game for players that just wanted to explore, you know, shit like that, I think that's cool. And you could also redo it. Yeah, I'm sure that it was well received. Criterion Dungeons were our first high-end content for smaller groups, and we received a lot of positive feedback from players who enjoyed tackling them with party of friends. That said, the difficulty of Criterion Dungeon is comparable to an 8-man player Savage Raid, if not harder, so there were also comments that felt the current rewards aren't motivating enough to attempt the content. Yeah, what do you mean current rewards? There aren't any rewards! See, this is the problem here, is the way this is worded. So there were also comments that felt the current rewards. Motherfucker, there were no rewards. There's no current reward. A materia is not a fucking reward, man. The rewards need to be determined very carefully in relation to rewards for other content. No, it doesn't! No, it doesn't! It comes out after the fucking raid tier. Just give it raid gear. How hard, like, that's the thing I don't understand. How hard is it of a concept is this to understand? The raid comes out. This shit comes out after the raid. They literally just said, it's comparable to an 8-man player Savage Raid, if not harder. Why the fuck are you not giving raid gear for the piece of content that uses raid gear that's comparable to an 8-man player Savage Raid? How is this hard? How is this fucking hard, bro? I don't understand. It's like they don't even think about it. It's never even entered their mind, maybe we should put some fucking raid gear in here. It's never even entered their mind. That is so fucking disheartening, man. It's so disheartening. Like, this is unreal. This is unreal. This is the easiest answer ever, man. The rewards need to be determined very carefully. No, they don't. Just fucking put raid gear in there in relation to rewards and other content. But we will continue deliberating on that idea to satisfy as many players as possible. Bro, who the fuck is gonna be shitty if this shit drops raid gear? Like, I don't understand. How is this even a conversation? The answer's like, this person literally said the answer right here. The difficulty of Criterion Dungeons is comparable to an 8-player Savage Raid, if not harder. Then in the same thought, the rewards need to be determined very carefully. What? You literally said the answer right here. Anyway, with the varying difficulty and the branching paths of these dungeons, how much work does it take to get things right? How long are they typically in development? To achieve the right difficulty level, we followed our usual thought process for 4-player dungeons, but also had to remember that parties could have fewer players or lack certain roles. Since Variant Dungeons were meant to feel like a typical 4-player dungeon with any party composition, we built a new system in which all 3 roles are weighed equally, and the difficulty only challenge is based on the number of participants. We began development somewhere between 1 to 1.5 patches earlier than usual in order to build the new system, its branching paths, and the accompanying NPC's animation. Building a new system was a one-off task, but the future Variant Dungeons still have to be balanced for 1 to 4 participants. Various different paths and more, so they'd still require a lot more work than a standard 4-player dungeon. The difference is especially apparent with background design, since the additional paths directly translate to more work to be done. How do you design the bosses for Variant and Criterion Dungeons? How is it different from the boss design in standard dungeons? Designing bosses for Variant and regular dungeon involves the same overall process. We're provided with the boss's lore, which we use to rough out its main concept and then brainstorm its main mechanics. I'd say the main difference with Variant Dungeons are planning out the branching paths and their associated mechanics, as well as creating mechanics that can be resolved regardless of party size. Bosses are usually designed with only their lore in mind, so creating battle mechanics that were indirectly related to the boss, like turning a dial switch located somewhere else in the dungeon, provide to be a challenge for many of our staff. That's weird. Bosses are usually designed with only their lore in mind. Furthermore, we had certain limitations to work with. For example, considering how many players might choose to participate solo, so we couldn't use mechanics that required multiple players to stack together or spread out for targeted AoEs. Criterion Dungeon bosses are even more challenging to design. I don't know, I'm thinking about it now. I can't see why that they would word it like this, like bosses are even more challenging to design. My opinion comes from an opinion of extreme ignorance. I'm not a battle designer. I've never done it. If they say it, then they're probably way more right than I am. I just don't think about it like in terms of like difficulty, right? I think of it as a different angle, like a different, you have to just approach it different, because I don't know why you would compare a boss that can vary with how many people that you have in it versus a boss that's designed for 4. Like, why are you making those two comparisons? They're not the same. So it's like a different way to design as opposed to it's harder to design. I don't know. Like I said, man, We're just gonna go with what they say because I have no fucking idea how to dude, I'm not a developer, so I don't know. It's somewhat similar to designing 8-player raids and that we're creating 2 separate difficulties. But Variant dungeons are about as hard as a 4-player dungeon, whereas Criterion dungeons are equivalent to Savage, so the difficulty gap between normal and Savage rage pales in comparison. Creating bosses for Criterion dungeon requires staff members who not only could retool Variant dungeon mechanics and resources for high-end content, but also keep the necessary development resources under control. A notable aspect of Criterion dungeons, or more accurately, the difference between 4-player and 8-player, is how there's only 1 tank and 1 healer, and individual DPS players have more responsibility. No tank swaps meant more emphasis on positioning enemies or having tanks stand in front of the party. The healer could be a pure or barrier healer, so we had to design more for mechanics rather than incoming damage. Furthermore, we had to replace a restriction on raises to avoid a disparity between DPS jobs with and without access to raise. With all that said, there were also advantages. Designing mechanics that require determining party member priority and giving each player an equal amount of responsibility were easier with a smaller party size. Okay. I feel like that all of this, because 14 is so role restricted, I feel like that they've been doing it for so long that they kind of forgot how to do without that shit. I guess their version of it is to just give everybody every mechanic, but no mechanic is specific, right? So like look at top, you know, there are no healer specific mechanics. There are no like tank specific mechanics. But then look at like DSR. I guess what I'm failing to see is how is making these mechanics any different than top? I think a lot of this is fluff. I think it's a lot of bullshit. I don't think that this is harder to design at all. I think this person either was mistranslated or they're wording shit poorly. But designing 4-man content should be easier than 8-man content. You have less people. And in addition to having less people, you don't have a raise. And let's not even talk about the DPS check. You could fucking do this shit with like 4 tanks if you wanted to. So let's not even talk about the DPS check. So there's no DPS check whatsoever. Me personally, as a non-dev, remember, I don't see how it's any harder than designing a Savage raid. I don't think this person's like trying to like lie or anything like that. I just think that their answers are just bullshit is all. I think that they don't know what they're talking about. That's what I think, but I mean, we'll see. Do you have any plans to evolve or change the formula for Variant and Criterion Dungeons? Can we expect Variant and Criterion to stick around throughout 7.0? And have you thought about how new jobs might work in previous Variant dungeons? We don't have plans to change their fundamental formula at the moment, but as we release more Variant dungeons, we might find something we're lacking or can improve, which we'd like to address with flexibility. Good. Hopefully there'll be fucking rewards in 7.0, because you already know there's not going to be any rewards in the next one. And of course, we plan on having the new jobs coming with the next expansion to be fully playable in the Variant and Criterion, just as we've done with the deep dungeons and other content. As for future of Variant and Criterion Dungeons in 7.0 and beyond, it'll depend on feedback we receive from our players. So for now, we'd like to hear your thoughts and comments after playing through Mount Rock On and the 3rd dungeon, which is currently in development. So, I mean, this interview wasn't as good as the last one. There were some alarming things on their mentality. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because this is the first time that they've ever done something like this. And typically whenever 14 introduces something new, it's like not exactly the most polished. And when I say something new, I don't mean like a new raid tier. I mean like a new system, like a new, brand new piece of content. This interview was good to see their mentality on it, to see the way they think about these Criterion dungeons and Savage dungeons. But there were some alarming things in here. This interview was, I mean, it's good to have. It's really good to have. You know, again, I do really enjoy the Criterion dungeons. I think that they're awesome, especially on server up, man. They're so cool. But the Savage version definitely is a worthless steaming pile of shit that needs to be completely fucking redone. When you look at a piece of content and if you remove it from the game and nothing changes about the game and no one gives a shit, that's a problem. That means that that content is worthless. It needs to be redone. You can do that with Savage Criterion. You can literally remove it from the game. No one is going to give a shit. It's not going to change anything. Anyway, yeah. Okay. A good react. The react is over.